Let's start in the shallower waters and work our way toward the resources in the deep ocean, because some of these prices are going to make your jaw drop. Sunlight zone, seaweed and kelp. You have almost certainly consumed this today without knowing it. Seaweed and kelp are not decorations on your sushi. They are one of the most commercially versatile crops on the planet. Carrageenan from red seaweed is the thickener inside your ice cream, infant formula, and salad dressing. Alginate from brown kelp makes everything from surgical dressings to vitamin capsule coatings. Asia farms roughly 35 million metric tons annually. Raw wet seaweed sells for between 50 cents and $1.60 per pound. Dried and processed, that jumps to $15 or more. The global seaweed market was valued at approximately $20 billion in 2024. Price per pound, 50 cents to $1, 60 raw, up to 15 processed. Global market, roughly $20 billion per year. Fish oil and omega-3. Next is the resource keeping the entire supplement industry running. Fish oil and omega-3 fatty acids extracted primarily from anchovies, sardines, and mackerel. EPA and DHA, the two most biologically active omega-3 compounds, are used in heart medications, infant formula, and prescription cardiovascular treatments. About a third of American medicine cabinets have a bottle of this right now. Bulk fish oil sells for $3 to $8 per pound. Pharmaceutical grade, high-purity omega-3 concentrate reaches $25 to $30 per pound. The global fish oil market sits at roughly $10 billion annually. Price per pound, 3 to 8 bulk. Up to 30 pharmaceutical grade, global market roughly $10 billion per year. Bluefin tuna. Then there is the fish that makes every other fish feel insecure about its pricing. Bluefin tuna. A single fish can weigh over 1,000 pounds and live 40 years. Most prized in Japan, where the fatty belly cut known as toro is considered among the most luxurious foods on Earth. At standard U.S. wholesale, premium bluefin runs around $40 per pound. The global bluefin market is valued at approximately $2.4 billion annually. Now for a fun fact. Every January, Tokyo's Toyosu Fish Market holds its famous New Year auction, where prestige and publicity send prices into a completely different dimension. In January 2025, a single 608-pound bluefin sold for $1.3 million, $2,160 per pound. The all-time record set in 2019 was $3.1 million. For one fish. That is not a market price. That is a marketing event. Price per pound, 40 wholesale. Fun fact auction record, $2,160 per pound. Global market, roughly $2.4 billion per year. Coral bioactive compounds. The most expensive thing in the sunlight zone is not a fish. It is a chemistry set that took 400 million years to build. Coral reefs produce some of the most pharmacologically complex compounds in nature, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and anti-cancer agents found nowhere else on Earth. Aracy, a leukemia treatment derived from a Caribbean sea sponge compound in the 1950s, is still used in chemotherapy today. Isolated bioactive extracts purified to pharmaceutical grade run between $1,000 and $5,000 per pound. The global marine pharmaceuticals industry, much of it rooted in reef chemistry, is valued at around $4.5 billion and projected to nearly double by 2030. Price per pound, $1,000 to $5,000 isolated extract. Marine pharma market, roughly $4.5 billion per year. Twilight zone, squalene, almost certainly in your bathroom right now. Squalene is a lipid found in extraordinarily high concentrations in the livers of deep-sea sharks, living between 300 and 1,500 meters down. These sharks have no swim bladder. Instead, they evolved enormous livers, sometimes 20% of their body weight, filled with squalene oil that keeps them neutrally buoyant. That same oil mimics the natural lipid profile of human sebum, absorbs without grease, and reduces fine lines and moisture loss. It appears in anti-aging creams, foundations, sunscreen, lip balm, and hair conditioner, and as a vaccine adjuvant used in flu, COVID, and malaria vaccines. 3,000 sharks must be killed to produce a single ton. Approximately 2.7 million deep-sea sharks are harvested for their liver oil every year. Bulk cosmetic-grade squalene sells for $8 to $32 per pound. The global market sits at roughly $160 million annually. Price per pound, 8 to 32 bulk. Global market, roughly $160 million per year. Green fluorescent protein, the resource that makes everything else in the twilight zone look like spare change. Green fluorescent protein, GFP. First isolated from a bioluminescent jellyfish in this zone off the Pacific coast. The scientists who figured out how to use it won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2008. When you insert the GFP gene into any living cell, a bacterium, a cancer cell, a neuron, that cell starts glowing green under ultraviolet light, permanently, without harming it. Before GFP, you killed the organism and looked at a snapshot. After GFP, biology became a live broadcast. Tag cancer cells and watch them spread, map connections in the brain, in real time. Every major university, every pharmaceutical company, every genetics lab in the world uses it. Research-grade isolated GFP runs between $50,000 and $500,000 per pound. It all started because a jellyfish needed to glow in the dark. Price per pound, $50,000 to $500,000 research grade. Nobel Prize, 2008. Global market, roughly $1 billion per year. Midnight zone, ambergris, one of the most bizarre price tags in the ocean. Ambergris is produced exclusively by sperm whales in their intestinal tract as the digestive system struggles to break down squid beaks. Over years, it accumulates, hardens, and is expelled into the ocean, where it floats and slowly transforms into something extraordinary. Fresh ambergris smells terrible. Aged ambergris develops one of the most complex scents in the world. Warm, musky, oceanic, deeply animalic with a tobacco leaf sweetness underneath. Used in luxury perfumes for over 3,000 years as a fixative, binding and extending a fragrance for hours beyond what any synthetic can achieve. Wholesale ambergris trades at approximately $10,000 per pound, while gold trades at around $1,800. Ambergris beats it by a factor of 5. Premium white ambergris commands up to $16,000 per pound at retail. It only washes ashore every few years anywhere in the world. Price per pound, $10,000 wholesale, up to $16,000 premium retail. Global market, roughly $600 million per year. Deep sea sponge anti-cancer compounds. The most expensive thing in the midnight zone is something you cannot see, taste, or smell. A class of compounds isolated from deep sea sponges that have become the basis of multiple FDA-approved cancer drugs. Cytarabine, derived from a Caribbean sea sponge, remains a frontline treatment for certain leukemias. Trabectedin, sold as Yondelis, is approved in the US and Europe for soft tissue sarcoma. Eribulin mesylate, derived from a deep-sea sponge compound, is approved for metastatic breast cancer. These are not theoretical. They are in cancer wards right now, keeping people alive. Isolated anti-cancer compounds purified to pharmaceutical grade run between $500,000 and $2 million per pound. The global marine pharmaceuticals market is valued at approximately $4.5 billion today and projected to nearly double by 2030. Less than 5% of the deep sea has been scientifically sampled. Price per pound, $500,000 to $2 million isolated pharmaceutical compound. Marine pharma market, roughly $4.5 billion per year. The abyss, polymetallic nodules. They look like lumpy potatoes. Polymetallic nodules have been building for millions of years, one atom at a time, precipitating out of seawater onto the abyssal floor. A single nodule might take 10 million years to grow to the size of a potato, but they cover the seafloor in some areas at 15 kilograms per square meter, packed with manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt, the same metals inside every electric vehicle battery, every smartphone, every wind turbine. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a 4.5 million square kilometer stretch of Pacific between Hawaii and Mexico, is estimated to contain up to 30 billion metric tons of nodules. The combined metal value is estimated at approximately $18.4 trillion. That is an estimate, not a figure you can simply cash out, but the CCZ alone contains more nickel, more cobalt, and more manganese than all terrestrial reserves currently known to exist. No commercial mining operation has yet begun. Price per pound of extracted metal value, $200 to $600. Estimated CCZ reserve, roughly $18.4 trillion unextracted. Cobalt. Now let's pull one metal out of those nodules and price it separately, because cobalt's story right now is one of the most important commodity stories in the world. Cobalt is the critical ingredient in lithium-ion batteries powering every electric vehicle, every laptop, and every smartphone on Earth. 70% of the world's supply comes from one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. In early 2025, the DRC banned all cobalt exports. Prices surged from around $10 per pound to approximately $24 per pound by late 2025, a 140% increase in under 9 months, making it the best-performing commodity of the year. One government's decision doubled the cost of the metal inside every battery on Earth. The CCZ nodules alone are estimated to contain more cobalt than all known land-based reserves combined. The question of whether to mine them is no longer purely academic, it is increasingly geopolitical. Price per pound, roughly 24 as of late 2025, up 140% in 9 months. Global cobalt market, roughly 10 billion per year. Hydrothermal vent sulfide deposits. Then there are the hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where the Earth's internal heat drives superheated mineral-laden water through the crust. As that 400-degree fluid hits near-freezing seawater, minerals precipitate out instantly, building chimney structures, some several stories tall, out of concentrated copper, zinc, gold, and silver, called black smokers. First discovered in 1977, around 165 confirmed massive sulfide deposits have been identified globally. Raw ore at a vent field runs $5 to $15 per pound. The refined precious metal concentrations within, gold and silver especially, run between $1,000 and $5,000 per pound of refined output. USGS estimates suggest undiscovered seafloor sulfide deposits may contain median totals of 390 metric tons of gold and 10,000 metric tons of silver. Price per pound, 5 to 15 raw ore, 1,000 to 5,000 refined precious metal output. USGS estimated undiscovered gold, roughly 390 metric tons. Trenches. Extremophile enzymes, extremophile bacteria and archaea, microorganisms adapted to survive pressures that would instantly destroy any land-based cell, produce enzymes that function under conditions no laboratory-designed protein can tolerate. Cold-active DNA polymerases, pressure-stable proteases, catalysts that work where everything else fails. Research-grade isolated extremophile enzymes run between $50,000 and $500,000 per pound. Applications range from cold-temperature food processing to pharmaceutical manufacturing and DNA sequencing. The PCR enzyme behind virtually every COVID test on Earth, Taq polymerase, came from a thermophilic organism found in hydrothermal vents. The trenches may hold the next generation. Price per pound, 50,000 to 500,000 research and industrial grade. Global market, roughly $1.26 billion per year. Terbium. Trench sediments, the ancient mud at the very bottom of the ocean, are among the most concentrated deposits of heavy rare earth elements on the planet. A 2011 study of 2,000 Pacific sediment samples found rare earth concentrations as high as those being commercially mined in China. The most valuable confirmed in deep-sea sediment is terbium, a silvery white metal whose name comes from the Greek for difficult to obtain. It goes into the permanent magnets inside every electric vehicle motor, every wind turbine generator, and every advanced military guidance system. The EU, the US, and Japan all classify it as a critical raw material. China controls over 90% of global production and refining. As of 2025, terbium trades at roughly $1,827 per pound, up 500% since 2020. 1 square kilometer of Hadal sediment near a hotspot has been estimated to hold 25,000 metric tons of combined rare earth elements. A multi-billion-dollar reserve at the bottom of the ocean in a resource the world gets almost entirely from one country. Price per pound, roughly $1,827, up 503% since 2020. Pressure-adapted pharmaceutical compounds, the most expensive resource in any ocean layer. Pressure-adapted pharmaceutical compounds isolated from Hadal organisms, molecules produced by bacteria living at the absolute limits of biological possibility, with chemistry that exists nowhere else in the natural world. In the 1990s, compounds from deep-sea drilling cores were shown to inhibit colon tumor cell growth and prevent HIV replication. Since then, researchers have isolated Hadal strains producing molecules active against cancer, antibiotic-resistant infections, and neurological targets. Preclinical isolated compounds trade at between $100,000 and $1 million per pound, reflecting the cost of collection, the rarity of the organisms, and the novelty of the chemistry. The marine-derived drugs market is valued at approximately $4 billion and projected to exceed $9 billion by 2035. The trenches are the final frontier of that pipeline. Price per pound, 100,000 to 1 million preclinical isolated compounds. So here's the ocean, layer by layer, priced out. Kelp at 50 cents a pound, bluefin tuna at $40 wholesale, $2,000 at the most famous fish auction on Earth. Coral compounds at $5,000 a pound. Deeper, squalene from the livers of deep-sea sharks, a jellyfish protein that won a Nobel Prize at up to $500,000 a pound. Deeper still, Whale waste worth $10,000 a pound, beating gold by a factor of 5. Anti-cancer compounds from deep-sea sponges at up to $2 million a pound. In the abyss, $18 trillion of battery metals in potato-sized lumps nobody has touched. Cobalt surging 140% in 9 months because one country controls the land supply. Gold and silver building in chimney structures in the dark, one molecule at a time. And at the very bottom, organisms at pressures that would crush a submarine, producing chemistry that has never existed on land, worth up to $1 million a pound. The ocean covers 70% of the Earth's surface. We have explored less than 20% of it. The most valuable things in it are almost certainly still undiscovered. Subscribe to the Price Explainer. Every price tag has a story, and we have barely started diving.